Hi everybody, my name's Sam,
And my name's Ben.
and we're
The Book Fair
Boys. Great. Do you think we got it?
It's wonderful, I'm sure.
Probably not.
So, what are you joined by, Sam?
Speak of the devil, a nice White Claw black cherry.
Nice. Not
yeah.
70, the real stuff.
Fuck no. I'm a man. My mom got really into White Claws because back in December, I was like, let's get some White Claws. She was like, what's that? And now we've heard that there's a carbonation crisis, right? So the carbonation, factories aren't producing enough carbonation. I don't.
Isn't it just aerated water? Is it not? Is there no compressed air?
Yeah, I guess they're running out of compressed air, and there aren't enough people working in the factories to make more compressed air. I don't really know, man.
So I have somebody who has one of those soda streams.
They're great. We have one.
Yeah, it's just. Isn't it just a little tube of air? I mean, is it carbon air? Is it a special kind of air? Because they're carbonated, so I could see it being a special kind of air that's needed. I'm going to sound so dumb.
I know. I think they're running out of carbonation.
What kind of air is it?
Yeah, I have no idea, dude. The news has been so insane lately. I mean, there's a carbonation crisis. Everyone's freaking out about these murder hornets.
What?
Have you not heard about this?
No.
Oh my god, man. I'm about to blow your minds. This is really incredible.
I mean, I think I saw a meme, but I thought it was just a joke, where it's 2020's here's your pandemic, then here's your murder hornets. And I was like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and they're really not... I'll start with what I see as kind of the sad part of it first, and then I'll get into
the murder.
The murder, yeah, it's crazy. But so they, I really don't want to say this incorrectly, but I think they are indigenous to Japan.
Okay.
I've seen them referred to a lot as the Asian murder hornets, which is just come on, we already had the Chinese coronavirus, quote unquote, and now we've got Asian murder hornets.
Oh my
it's
God.
not a good time for.
People are going to stop going to Japanese restaurants because they're going to be afraid that they're going to get some hornets stinging them. Specifically murdery hornets,
Yeah, it's never particularly been a good time to be an Asian American, but it just seems like it's becoming less and less of the time to be that. I mean, it has been since 2016. What am I talking about?
We're talking about murder hornets. You're explaining what a murder hornet is.
Yeah, right. On my misplaced soapbox.
So
we're gonna cut.
So the sad part is that the Japanese murder hornets, but not the murder part.
Right. So the sad part is that I've seen them referred to as Asian murder hornets.
Oh, I'm sorry, Asian. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people are oh, the Japanese murder hornets, and so it's come on, right? Hot off the heels of the Chinese coronavirus.
Yeah.
What terrible timing to also have this completely unrelated thing.
Yeah.
The curb. Anyway, so I saw a New York Times article about a week ago that said 2 of these murder hornets have been spotted just south of the Canadian border in the state of Washington. And the reason that this is bad is because these murder hornets are an inch long, and they look cartoonishly evil. That's how I describe them. And if you look at pictures of them, it's true. They have mandibles that are just fucking giant.
Just scissor-sized pinchers.
Yeah, and what they do is they will go into a hive of bumblebees and decapitate the entire hive.
The bumbles.
Bee by bee. And then they will take the bodies and stuff them into their nests so that their babies can have protein. And,
oh my god.
So you will find an entire... And this is how they discovered that the murder hornets were coming into the States, because... This guy a beekeeper found an entire hive of his bumblebees decapitated and just completely slaughtered.
There's just a bunch of heads, like, on pikes, and the bodies have been dragged off to feed the young.
Yeah, and then, like, in Bumblebee blood on the wall, it's painted, like, free the hornets, or, like, hornets rise. They immediately, teams of researchers and scientists and people were like, okay, we have to stop this because we can't have another force killing bumblebees. Obviously, that's a no-go. So they're tracking these fucking things, and, like, there was a colony in Japan that was eradicated by this guy who just, like, went up to it wearing several layers of, like, sweatpants beneath his bee suit, and they stung him through all the layers, and he said it felt like hot tacks being driven into his skin. And so they've done tests now where, like, this dude stung himself on purpose and his whole arm seized up, and he was like, well, now I'm getting dizzy, and he, like, fell down. I just had to sit there and, like, couldn't move his hand. It was just paralyzed into this fist, and the whole, like, thing swole up. These things are nuts. And there's this video now of, like, it came out in, like, 2018 of a mouse being killed by a murder hornet.
Yes, I did see the mouse getting killed by the murder hornet, and it just, like, flies around and chills, and then, like, takes off. It doesn't do anything. Nope. It's just like it saw this mouse. And these things are like the Vikings of insects. They're like, they're like, I'm thinking of, like, the poor British monasteries that are sitting there on their piles of, you know, illuminated texts. You know, they've got their little gold chalices. They're having a good time. And those are the bumblebees. And then the next thing you know, you see this, like, longship on the horizon. And they're, like, going out and they're, like, waving. They're like, oh, look, there's these people.
These guys have nice-looking mandibles. And then all of a sudden, your whole monastery is decapitated.
I mean, I'm not trying to add to the Asian hate fever here or anything like that. But these things do sound really terrifying.
They are, and I don't remember exactly how they got into Canada and then started moving south, but there's also, I could be misremembering this, but there's also, like, if one murder hornet dies, then others will be attracted to the scent and will go to investigate. So if you kill one, you have to, like, get the fuck out. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? That sounds like some 90s, like, oh, every time you kill one cyborg, the beeper goes off and the other cyborgs come in.
Dude, these are apex predators. It sounds like. You gotta watch it. I'm very nervous now. I mean, I'm glad I'm down in Texas and they're making their way south. But, like, the Northeast, man.
I mean...
You're close to the border.
Well, so that was the thing, right? So, like, I saw this article and I was like, oh, shit, well, good thing we've only discovered 2 of them and they're in the Northwest. Like, that's insane. But I don't feel particularly endangered. And then the next day everyone was like, we gotta run from the murder hornets, but we can't run away because we have to stay indoors. You know, everyone was freaking out.
They're the Northwest. Thank God.
Yeah, so that was the thing. They were in the state of Washington, and there were only 2 of them that they discovered, and so they were like, we gotta track them down. But then, on that note, I also was taking something out of the shed the other day and found this, like, old, what looked like a wasp's nest. God. And so I was like, whoa. But it looked like
murder hornets.
There were like 10 dead wasps on it. So I was like, okay, clearly they all dried out in the heat or something. My mom and I broke it open, and inside were all these dead spiders. And so we were like,
what is going on?
The insect world has really been throwing me for a loop the last week. But so all these dead spiders, and we were like, oh, well, maybe what happened was that the spiders crawled into the hive and ate all the wasps. And then still there were larvae in there. They were still kind of gooey. And so I was like, are they alive? And, like, started crushing them. It was like, don't hatch. Don't grow, please. Whatever you are, spider or wasp, I don't care. So then my mom was like, well, maybe they, like, planted their eggs in the wasps. And I was like, but then they'd be eggs. They wouldn't be larvae, right? We looked it up, and they were mud dauber wasps, which will paralyze certain kinds of spiders and then kidnap them and stuff their paralyzed body into the nest so that when the wasp larvae they can have protein to feed on. And my mom was reading
insects
that
are very metal.
It's insane, right? And
They're very metal.
and so my mom was reading this article, and she literally, like, almost word for word, she was like, you can crack open a nest of mud daubers and find the insides stuffed with spiders. And we were just like, ah!
At least it wasn't murder wasps or murder hornets or whatever these. I don't know, man. I need something to happen in 2020 that's not related to death or deforestation or, like, apparently bugs murdering people. It's just too much. I can't deal with this 2020 vibe.
There's this bit, someone like Jen something, maybe, anyway, or she was like, traveling back in time to March, talk to yourself before the epidemic. And then her past self was like, yeah, I really feel like the Australian wildfires are going to be like one of the defining events of 2020. And her future self was like, the what? Oh, yeah, that's right.
How quaint.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Amazon burning.
Oh, nice.
Remember when
Yeah.
a third of the Amazon was burned down? At the end of
Just 2 months
2019?
ago?
In the beginning of 2020? Yeah, I know. It's like...
Oh, God. Anyway. Well, let's get away from this world for a bit and talk.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess I'm not doing my MC duties here. That's going to be a B-sides track. That'll be one of the short... We'll talk about murder wasps for a bit.
B-sides.
Oh, my God. Well, and, like, the idea of bullying has changed. I mean, when you look at 90s shows, I think of, like, the Power Rangers as the prototypical, like, goofball bullies, right? I forget those two characters. The big fat...
I watched it.
Oh, my God. So there's a bit...
I never watched
But you know
Power
what?
Rangers.
You're going to know who I'm talking about when I say these characters. They are archetypes of bullying.
Yeah.
There's the big...
All right.
There's the big fat one, and there's the, like, mean skinny one. And they're both,
Yeah.
like, so...
Spiked hair.
Yeah, they're, like... They might as well be. I don't know. I mean, you could tell me that and I would believe you. But they're, like... They're, like, dumb, but they, like, want to beat up the people because they, like... I mean, it's, like, sort of the like, you know, if we're doing, like, a blackface of bullying, you know what I mean? It's, like, that's what it is. It's, like, a very extreme exaggeration of, like, what are assumed type characteristics where these, like, people just want to beat people up and they're, like, not super smart and they're, like, mean... And even in R.L. Stein's books, like, they're similar. Like, the last two bully groups have been like that, right? Like,
you have the same archetypes.
but they're punchy bullies. 90s bullies are punchy bullies. Like, they're not Sari, who is a bully, and we recognize that what she's doing is bullying. But, like, her mode of power and control is not, like, physical. It's not like she goes and she, like, beats people up. It just makes them feel real bad about, you know, the way that they feel about themselves. And like, so it's interesting how the shift of, like, the conversation about what bullying is has changed. But, like, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think if you, like, looked at this book in 1990, you would have said Sari's a bully. You would have said she's kind of, like, annoying and mean, but, like, that's her character, is it's annoying and mean, not, you know, I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know what you would have done in the 90s, right? But
no, but that's right. I mean, like, no, that's exactly right. Like, you wouldn't say Sari was a bully then, but now you'd be like, she's the annoying cousin. But now you'd be like, well, she's kind of a bully. And maybe that's the Melania Trump bit, too, where you're like, okay, great. You're married to one of the biggest bullies there is. Tell us how we should not bully. And maybe she'd know better than anybody. She's in that fucking house. Sometimes I think of Melania Trump just having a life, and I'm like, ah!
I know, it is really... It's a sad thing to... Well, I don't know. It's just like... It's beyond... It's like, you know how there are things that are beyond imagination, and you would have thought a couple years ago that, like, the fact we were going to have a third of the Amazon burning down at the same time that a pandemic was springing up and the president was talking about putting light and Lysol inside your body, like, that was beyond imagining. Like, somehow still there is a world beyond imagining, and that's what I think of when I think of what it must be like to go home to the White House as Melania Trump. Like, it must just be... You know, there's lots of ways in which she's highly privileged and that there's probably lots of reasons to have negative feelings towards her. I don't know enough about her to have negative feelings, but there's a well of empathy within me to think, like, what must it be like? Just what must it be like?
I also fully believe that she's been dead. Have you seen the, like, fake Melania shit? And she really hasn't made, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, she really hasn't made a lot of public appearances.
Maybe she thought, like,
besides that.
hey, I can say bullying is bad, and, like, that, at the very least, will get the nation to, like, rally. Like, there's nothing that Melania Trump can say that people are going to get behind, but she's like, you know what, I can say bullying's bad, and people will agree with me. And she said it, and people were like, fuck you, Melania.
And I guess I even had some of that same impulse just, like, 5 minutes ago when I was like, what is Melania Trump know about bullying? Like... But it's hard to buy into that.
I'm just kidding. I have no. I'm not trying to make. I'm not trying to make a MAGA hat argument here for like Melania Trump playing 4D chess with something. But
no, but like it's hard to. I feel like I have sympathy for Melania, and I guess like you, I don't know her well enough to make that claim confidently. But I also think it's difficult to buy into someone who is like, we need to not bully when you're married to someone. To a degree, like how much do you want to be married to that person?
Well, it's such a joke. Like, it's like if Hillary Clinton had come out and been like, you know, women really shouldn't stay with men who have had affairs with other women. You know what I mean? Like it's just like or you know, you can think of some equivalent, you know, where it's like if George W. Bush's wife had come out and said something about like really needing to do a lot more Katrina relief and caring for poor black people or something like that. You know, it's just yeah, everybody agrees with that, but it's not something that your husband is well known for or something like that. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is all just like super patriarchal ways in which we're like assuming the character of women based upon their husband's actions or something. I don't know.
God, yeah. Can someone please correct us?
We're like swimming in our privilege over here. We're drinking alcohol, talking about Goosebumps books for fun while the rest of the world burns.
Yeah, we're like, golly, I wish I could be more productive as we write consistently and create podcasts and shit. And like, you know, also like, fuck, what was I just gonna say? I just as a last thought, I remember when the shit about like Bill Clinton playing with balloons at the rally came out. Do you remember that?
No.
So at some Hillary Clinton rally, they dropped, you know, the balloons came down.
Yes,
and
I do
Bill
remember this video.
He was so stoked. He was just like a little kid, like bouncing the balloons and was like, woo! And like I was so excited, and everyone was like, wow, look at Bill Clinton. And I remember feeling like, oh, God, that such benign evil compared to what we have going on now. Completely different standards.
Benign evil. That's a really interesting way to talk about politics. Guys, we're not a political podcast.
None of this matters.
As MC, I'm going to press the hard reset button here.
All right, and bring us back.
So please. we've been talking about Melania Trump. We've been talking about the Clinton presidency. We've been talking about white privilege. We've been talking about everything, man. We have not been talking about mummies. So
yeah.
I think so when we last left it, we were I think only in like chapter 4 of this book still. Maybe chapter 5. Yeah. And this book actually was really interesting to me. So
and also, like, were people shorter back then? I know that that's, like, kind of a thing, but also isn't, like, the mummified body will just shrink because it's dehydrated, right? So...
I guess most accounts of, like, historical height is that, like, the 1900s to 2000s was a time of massive just general raising because of, like, nutrition standards. Because suddenly everybody's eating meat and balanced diets. And they're not, like, having to worry about dying... of cholera or whatever.
That makes sense.
Just coronavirus.
Also, like, people are gonna get shorter again. I also like very humble brag. I got to tour Shakespeare's birth home once, and someone was like, "Oh, the beds are shorter because people were shorter," and the tour guide was like, well, "Actually, the beds are shorter because people would sleep sitting up because they believed that if the moon hit you when you were lying down to sleep, your soul would go out the window, or like the devil would steal your soul or something. So you have to sit up."
I call bullshit on that tour guide. This guy's making bullshit out of his ass.
He's like,
That's
yeah.
that sounds to me like he's abusing his tour guide privileges. Like, I'm just gonna make some shit up.
Yeah, he's high. He's like, oh yeah, see, and then an entire group of elderly people plus one dorky 13-year-old were like, well, actually,
You're telling me that
the rest of my life,
all of Europe laid down, or no, sat up in bed. So there was an entire bed constructing industry designed around standards that were going to be focused on length that allowed people to sit up comfortably because we were afraid that the moon would steal our soul. Like, that was what was...
yes.
I'm telling you, if I was a tour guide and I had to lead a bunch of, like, college students around on a regular basis, and you had that one person, you know, who's going to speak up, and they're going to be like, actually, and I would come up with some sort of bullshit story, too, to, like, tell them.
Fair. Similarly, a girl that I studied abroad with was, like, also a subtle brag. I went to Oxford. I studied at Oxford for a semester. And
nice. Sorry.
And so we were taking a tour of Oxford, and she was like, people used to not drink water because it came from the ground, and they believed that anything from the ground was coming up from, was connected to the devil. And I was like, that's not possible. That you would die. You need water. What are you talking about? And I was like, so what would they drink instead? And she was like, ale or wine. And I was like, if you're thirsty, ale ain't gonna help. You need water. This doesn't make any sense. Diane, her name wasn't Diane, but I think Diane is a good name to, like, be mad at. Listen, Diane. Yeah, so those are my two fun facts. Why was I talking about this?
So I don't know. This book is really good for us to be, like, this distracted about it. So the kids are about to get boiled alive. Invisible Man is kind of the science thing too, right? Like, what's the deviance there?
I don't know. Like, the
new version is like, hey, let's just take this whole idea and make it about an abusive relationship. And I think that works because we're not going to pretend like we understand the mythology of this thing. We're just like, gaslighting is scary, and we're going to, like, just make this about gaslighting.
Yeah. Did you see it? The new?
No, I want to see it. And now that it's on streaming, I think I'm going to try and see it. But I have this, like, problem where people say spoilers, and I'm like, don't care, and then just watch the reviews anyway, because I really appreciate, like, knowing people's opinions on films that came out, like, whether or not I'm going to be wasting my time, because nobody ever gets into the good stuff before they talk about spoilers anyway. Like, they're going to be like, I recommend it or not, but they're not going to give you enough information to know if you should see it. That's another B-sides, is Ben's take on spoilers. But
I think it would be fun to just, like, do a montage of, like, little cut bits that are interesting and just, like, throw them together with some, like, music or something. But no, I just watched it maybe a month ago or so.
Is it good?
So meaning to me. Yeah, I really liked it. I have lots of thoughts. I watched it with a friend of mine. We both had lots of thoughts about the way that it handled abuse and that kind of narrative, and I think that there were certain things that it did that worked very effectively, and then certain things that, to me and to my friend, we were both sort of like, I don't know, that feels like you sort of glance through the abuse textbook and we're like, these are sort of the marks that we want to hit in certain ways, and, like, we thought that it could have been more clever about those areas. But on the whole, I was shook by several scenes in that movie.
Good.
And I thought the invisibility, like, trick was really ooky. The way that they, like, did it. Because
you like ooky stuff.
Yeah, I like that ookiness.
He's some optics guy, and, like, creates some optics suit that makes him invisible. And, it's in the trailer, like, her dumping paint on his face, and that's a really cool visual effect, even just in the trailer. Like, whoa, there is something, if you want to get to the fundamentals, like, gaslighting and stuff like that are creepy, but there is something, too, about being proven right that something is there, like when everybody and all of your other senses tell you that it's not. And so there is something, like, that's almost fundamentally terrifying about being able to throw paint on a place where you think a person is and seeing the shadow of a person, like, emerge. Because it's like...
Yeah, and that was sort
everything that I think and feel is wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead. No. You. You've seen the movie.
I feel like I'd be better about not talking over you if we were, like, in person, not over Zoom. Like, it's really easy to
That's
talk
not true.
over someone. Do you say that's not true?
Yeah, that's definitely not true. we both talk over each other no matter what. I mean, this is not like a one-way street. Both of us sit down. You
fair.
remember like those tables at Goddard? We'd sit down and like Emma would have to get up in frustration after 5 minutes because we've just been talking over each other and making dumb jokes.
Yeah, it would be like it would be impossible to get anywhere at Goddard because you would have the same kind of thing with like so many people. So you'd be like, I'm just going to the bathroom. But then from point A to point B, you would run into like 3 different people. You'd be like, oh, by the way, you're the only other person I've ever met who has enjoyed this one TV show. Like, can I, and it would be everybody at Goddard who had like one thing with. You'd be like, oh my God, I've never met anybody else who like thought about this thing or something. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was sort of the thing about Invisible Man that he thought was not handled super well, where like she says these sort of textbook things of like, he's keeping me away from all my friends, he's really isolating me, he makes me believe that I'm crazy, he does all this gaslighting and emotionally abusive stuff.
Yeah.
And not one person around her is like, that sounds pretty textbook, sounds like you're in an abusive relationship, or like even says, I believe you. It feels like she exists in a universe where that kind of relationship is unique.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I think the narrative would have been more interesting if she had been like, here's my relationship, and they would have been like, well, you're in an abusive relationship. Like, oh, it's certainly like, I'm a therapist, I understand how like you say it feels like he's even in the room right now, because a lot of my other patients say the same kind of thing. And then she could be like, no, he's in the room right now. So things like that, I thought like,
as opposed to the therapist being like, but he's not in the room right now. And she's like, no, I mean literally. And she's like, no, he's emotionally not. And he's also literally not. Like, you are just crazy. And this man was right to tell you that.
Yeah. And then someone starts strangling her from behind, and she's like,
and she's like,
it's your
nothing's
emotions.
happening.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening.
Your emotions are choking you. But yeah, so just like if one person had been like, I believe you, I don't know about the invisibility bit, but I believe that like your experience.
Although, here's the thing. I have not seen the movie. I have really strong opinions on this movie for not having seen it. Here's the thing, though, is even the invisibility bit, like, there's a part of me that's like, it's very clearly set up in the trailer, again. And in the early parts, like the first like little snippets I've seen, like some of the like snippets of her sneaking out of the house, that this guy is an optics expert that's working on an invisibility suit. It's not like this is secret knowledge. And so it might be like the sort of thing that only somebody who's read Scientific American would know. But if she's like, yeah, I'm dating Elon Musk and he has a rocket that he wants to take people to Mars, he said this, and people are like, no, nobody's going to Mars. He's like, no, but he's going he's going to Mars. He has a company where he built rocket ships that'll take you to Mars. And he's certainly sending satellites up into space right now. No, come on. Like,
sit down.
Like it's
yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's like he lives in this big fucking mansion, and he's got the suit just out in the open for anybody to find. And also, like, what is an optics expert? She, like, 4 different times in the movie, she's like, he's an optics expert. He was working on optics.
That's fair.
And everybody's
totally
like,
fair.
oh, optics, you say? Like, what is that? Because for me,
the best glasses.
Like, yeah, ooh. Because for me, like, that brings to mind, like, oh, he's good at spinning a campaign or something. He's good at the optics for, like, this celebrity or whatever. He's on an optics team. But instead, he's just designing a suit filled with cameras that makes him invisible. What? Why didn't anybody know that? And, like, that's exactly right. Like, and she, like, spoilers, but at one point she has the mask of the suit, and she's like, this is my proof that he has the ability to become invisible. And she leaves it and goes to, like, her friend or source and is like, I know where it is. And I'm like, you don't, because he's moved it. Like, why didn't you just take it?
Also, anyway. I don't know. It's fine. I'll see the movie. You know what I'll do is I'll see the movie, and then I can actually have a conversation with you about it.